Welcome to the Whole Man Podcast, episode 14. I am I am nervous. I am excited. I am open. I am willing. I am here. I am now. I am happy. I am full of love and life right now. And my name is Cowell. I'm so excited for this episode. It's the first time that I get to have a guest on. I get to have the beautiful and powerful Kianga Ford. Kianga, welcome to the Whole Man Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And welcome to anyone who's listening. Thank you for being here. Uh, the purpose of this podcast is primarily for me. It's for me to continue my journey and to continue to explore this beautiful experience of life that I get the opportunity to have. And so I don't come here as a teacher. I come here as a friend and a fellow traveler and a learner and someone who's curious about what's happening here. And today, this being the first time that I'm having a guest on, I'm so excited because I have a deep knowing and a deep belief that Kianga has so much to offer me. And so here we are, and we're going to see where this goes. Kianga, thank you for being here. Um, and I asked Kianga before we started recording if she would start us off with just a connecting and grounding exercise. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Awesome. So I love a good experiment. I love play, and I feel called to just drop deeply into one of my favorite ways of connecting with the feminine energy, and that is to work with desire, and we call this exercise desire pulls. So if you're game, I'm going to invite you to play here with me in real time. If you're listening, you can listen to Ty's responses or you can respond to the invitation of my voice directly. It's very simple. I'm just going to ask you, what do you desire? Each time you answer, I'll say thank you and I'll ask the question again. I'll let you know when it feels like we've reached a good stopping point. And I'll usually let you know that we have three more pulls before we stop so that it's not so abrupt. Are you game?
Ah, absolutely. Sounds marvelous.
Amazing. All right. What do you desire?
I desire connection.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire openness.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire love.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire growth.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire healing.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire remembrance.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire wholeness.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire release.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire relief.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire intimacy.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire joy.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire safety.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire slow down.
Thank you. I want you to give yourself permission to go ahead and drop a level deeper and just feel into the expanse and the possibility when the question is asked, what do you desire?
I desire to be touched.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire connection with human beings that's slow enough to just be with each other and to look into each other's eyes and to not have to use words.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire playfulness.
Thank you. We'll do 3 more folds. I invite you to go all the way into the core and express anything that's yet unexpressed. What do you desire?
I desire sex.
Thank you. What do you desire?
I desire freedom.
Thank you. Last fold. What do you desire?
I desire connection.
Thank you.
How beautiful.
Mm. How was that for you?
Oh, it was intimate. Um, it was, there's a part of me that felt like I wasn't accessing deep enough, or I didn't have deep enough available, and kind of a shame. And um, yeah, but also just a real enjoyment of having someone take the time to know me in this little way. I felt a real deep just pleasure in my soul.
You. Thanks for playing along.
What was your experience of this? I can only assume that you've done this hundreds of times. What did you experience?
It's one of my favorites. And one of the things I really enjoy is to slow time. And this is one of those practices where it's very easy for people to drop into a slower pace of resonance, to really start to scan their bodies, to scan the field of their experience, to scan a kind of accumulation of desire that has had no place to go or no place to run.
Mm,
And so it always for me has the impact of electrifying the field because we become so much more present and so much more slowed, so much more attuned and attentive in the field. And that allows me to connect with you and your resonance, and for you to connect with me because we're going slowly enough to find each other.
mm, I love that. I feel that.
Mm.
I love slowing down. That that seems to be one of the foundational secrets to this new joy that I'm finding and this new learning, and it amazes me how prevalent just the speed of everything is and how quickly it wants to re-inject itself into my behavior. And um, I love that you helped us slow down. I'm interested. I have a on my journey. I'm searching for like the roots of this experience and this experiment and this beautiful life that I have. And one of the one of the ways that I've categorized it is in an acronym, which I call it's BEAD. It's behavior, belief, emotions, awareness, and desire. And this practice being desire pulling. Um, I've found that desire is one of the foundations of my experience here. And my desire, I shamed my desire for so much of my life. And I separated myself from my desire. And I love that I am reconnecting to my desire. And so for you to do this practice, I'm just I want to know more about what you know about desire and what you've learned or what is desire? How do we play with it? What have you seen in your beautiful work? Where are the where have we gone wrong and where are our opportunities? And I don't know, will you just riff on desire a little bit?
Never thought about it. Kidding, kidding. Desire is really at the core of the work that we do. Hmm. Let's see how I can explain that a little more directly. Desire is really the core catalytic of the feminine aspect, right? You can't engage the feminine without engaging desire. And because we're new to each other in this conversation in this audience, I want to slow down and say that when I'm talking about the feminine, I'm not only talking about women, I'm talking about the feminine aspect that exists in all of creation, in
Mm,
all of creation and in every expression of creation. So there is a masculine and a feminine to everything in manifest existence. I do work a lot with women on unlocking this, but I have also spent a good time with men unlocking the unfiltered impulse, right? Because without knowing that, without having a direct relationship with desire, it's really hard to understand yourself and yourself in a relational field, right? If you've turned the volume all the way down on what you actually want, what it is that is calling you forward,
mm,
then for women, it tends to result in a closed offness, in a kind of lack of true access to life. And for men, the foreclosure of that desire tends to lead to a kind of self-denial that is the path to the danger and volatility, right? Is the path to the unhealthy behaviors. And so that coming back into awareness of what is your own unfiltered impulse? Because your own unfiltered impulse is, in fact, dangerous to no one. But the foreclosure of your own unfiltered impulse and your awareness of it is both dangerous and limiting to the collective.
mm. Wow. I love that. I'm living that. I am experiencing that. Um, the belief, the system that I grew up under, the religion and the religions that I grew up under. Uh, that list is expanding as I become more aware of, it's like I was a fish in water. I had no idea there was water all around me. You could ask me what religions are affecting you, and I would have just said Christianity, and that was one of the primary ones. But there's so many other what I now call religions that were affecting me. Patriarchy, Christianity, capitalism, Americanism, all of these things that were playing into me and that I was interacting with, and being such a young soul as a child, I chose acceptability over authenticity. And part of that acceptability was denying my desires. And it was falling in line with all of these religions. And I'm experiencing awakening from that. And the fear that I had and still do to this day is that if I bring my desires, I will hurt people. Like my desires will hurt people. And the amazing thing that I'm actually experiencing in real time is that the more I live from my actual desire, the more honest I am about it, the more beautiful everything gets around me. My own experience, my queen's experience, my children's experience, my brother's experiences, the people I come in contact with. And it's just incredible to witness like the exact opposite of what I thought would happen is happening. And there's a real tragedy that I feel that I believed the other way for so long.
Mm.
and and there's a tragedy in witnessing so many people that I interact with who still have that belief. And I'm curious how you talked about unfiltered desire, and I love that. Um, how do we remember, like after years and years of being bombarded with shame and fear, how do we remember what our desires are?
Yeah, it's a complex question, simple and complex, right? I think one of the ways that we collectively remember is to take stock of the impact of what happens when we forget.
Mm,
Those are the Epstein files. Those are everything under Me Too. Those are your Dominique Pellicot's, right? I just finished reading Giselle Pellicot's memoir, which was beautiful, called it
mm,
Hymn to Life.
mm,
And if those names don't immediately ring a bell, that is the man who drugged and had his wife gang raped more than 200 times by more than 80 men, 50 of whom were prosecuted.
mm,
And so, what is dangerous for us collectively is not the presence of desire, but the repression of desire. And when desire has no place to go, when desire cannot be owned, when I am working with men, I'm talking about that unfiltered impulse, and I'm talking about that specifically in the language of the beast, right?
mm,
It isn't that you cease to have a beast. It's that when you don't acknowledge your own desire, you cease to have a relationship with that beast. So
mm,
instead of having a pit bull that you can walk down the street with safely, that you have a relationship that he knows your signs and you know his,
mm,
you have a beast that's just been caged in the basement and is your family is only as safe as the door that is keeping
mm,
that beast in the basement. Right?
mm,
Yeah. Your family, the world, the women around you, the people around you are only as safe as the containment system. And most containment systems are not foolproof. So eventually the beast gets out and the beast wreaks havoc. Yeah. But it's not the fault of the beast. There's nothing actually wrong with the dog. The dog is not in relationship.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm again, that's exactly what I have experienced in my life. I put my beast in the dungeon, and it came out in horrible ways. It came out in addiction to pornography. It came out in uh, shaming and blaming my wife for my disconnection and my sorrow. It came out in being so short with my children, and it came out in so many ways. I was a kleptomaniac. I was stealing constantly. Um, and it wasn't until I had that wake up moment and I started to take steps back towards my desire that, I mean, I had spent so much time, read so many books, been a part of groups, all just on pornography alone, just like I gotta like figure out how to stop this. Spent so much energy trying to get that under control. And it wasn't until I actually just honored my sexual beast and my desire and said, no, this is a good part of me. This is a gift that I have to offer. And when I did that, it was like pornography just turned off, which just for my experience just blows my mind. And with all of those things.
I've actually never seen it operate differently with the men that I've seen go in to claim their own beast, go in to claim their own unfiltered desire, and they're consistently surprised that it has the women around them feel safer, that it has the people around them feel safer. You think about like the mechanism, what is kind of the antithesis of desire? What is available when desire is not available? Obligation
Mm,
and external metrics. And if you are only living from the impulse of obligation, then of course you're cultivating resentment. And
oh,
you're accumulating that resentment over time, which is why I really love the figure of Ned Flanders from The Simpsons, because I feel like he really shows us really directly the the cost of
mm,
that nice guy presentation, right? He's like, "Hi, diddly ho, neighbor," until he completely erupts. And we see that more often than we recognize, right? I think that the masculine collectively has been in a pressure cooker of obligation and
uh,
mm, sort of the impetus for emotive self-control and a
mm,
very narrow band of emotional expression, right?
yes.
For a variety of reasons. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. What can you expound on where you think that comes from, those reasons that you're talking about? What put us in that pressure cooker?
Mhm. Yeah, those are complex and overlapping, but what I see is that we're actually in a moment of culture change that's created a kind of double bind, a double constriction. So there is kind of the old patriarchal model of masculinity where, boys don't cry and men suck it up and persevere, and there's that playbook. But then the man was also, in the family context, the leader and the protector and the provider, and there was some clarity in that form. You don't emote, you hold these responsibilities. Your self-satisfaction comes from your ability to provide in certain very specific ways, including financially. Okay. And so that playbook is shifting, but in it has come mm, kind of the rising expectation that men will be in touch with a feminine side of themselves, which is emotionally expressive, which is appropriately expressive, um, and appropriately expressive has some challenges. And so there's this kind of old patriarchal figure. It's not dead, but it is dying. And then there's the kind of like neo-masculine that is going to be great with his own emotions, with recognizing the emotions of others, right? We're often talking about this in terms of emotional intelligence, but it's not taught anywhere. And a
Yes.
lot of the experience that men are actually having can't fit inside of the apparently narrow band of emotional appropriateness. So now it's important to express, but to express in certain limited ways and to know how that should happen. And so there's a kind of over calibration that creates an internal containment.
Mm,
And so those two systems, like one is dying, one is rising, but neither of them is actually making space for the authentic self-expression, particularly of the masculine aspect of humanity,
mm,
right? Which is sometimes
yeah.
intense, right?
Yeah.
It's not always I feel sad and I'm ready to cry, right? And the feminine is also not a soft, an entirely soft aspect, but there is an aspect of healthy masculinity which is about intensity, right? Which is about range of expression. And there's no place for that. There's no place where that's being
Mm,
cultivated. So we're getting a similar bottleneck with a new set of limiters, right? The
mm,
filters are new, but the containment is the same, essentially.
mm,
Some people are feeling both of those at the same time. So it's like double bound, double locked.
mm. So, I mean, I can only imagine for someone in that situation that it's the pressure cooker is increased.
And when you say someone in that situation, I think you're just talking about men in contemporary culture. I don't think you're talking about a specific outlier, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious to find myself in this. One of the things that comes to my mind that, and I'd love to get your input on this. One of the ways that I kind of see that I have dealt with this issue is by inserting myself into men's groups where there is a safe place for rage and sorrow and deep honesty. And it's only looking back on it now that I see the wisdom of the organizers of these groups, where it was always very clear, like, you don't bring this to your women or to your children. That is not the place to bring it, at least at the start. You bring that stuff to your brothers and to your fathers and to the men in this space who have done their work and now can hold space for your rage and for your sorrow. And I see the wisdom in that now, that because before that, I what I wanted was that connection with my women, with and my children, and yet had I brought that, I don't know that it I feel like it would have been way more destructive. Um, and I don't know. I'm curious to know, where is where is the intersect there for men and women working together? Um, and do you agree with what what happened in my experience, where it was like when I first started to reconnect with myself, the place that I did that was among my brothers. And now, 4 years into this journey, I am actually safe enough to bring that to my sisters and my woman and my children. How, how do you see that working? What's your perspective on that?
I'll approach this from a few sides. One is to say, I think there is a very reasonable caution to not bringing your brand new foster pit bull into the room with your toddler, right? There's a just a practical level at which you need to know that beast first. You need to have a
Mm,
relationship with that beast before you try to bring other people into relationship with it, right?
mm,
Yeah. And I just want to say for clarification, I have found this metaphor so helpful over time and to be in the practice of working with men who are learning to walk their beasts, who are learning how to now engage with this knowing, this part of themselves in public environments, right? But at first it's just a walking beside, it's just a being with, it's a being
mm,
internally aware before it has anything to do with anyone else. And the metaphor is not at all related to kind of the old school metaphors of men are dogs or, anything
no,
that's
yeah,
intended to be disparaging. It's really
yeah,
just to be in a relationship with one's own internal range, right? And
yeah.
that relationship is first with you. And the sort of second, more structural part that I'll talk about is the where of that. It does need to be in a safe space that is focused on you. For many years now, I've been holding space like that for men.
Mm, mm,
And it's not instead of space that men hold for men, but it is different. And
mm,
there are some men for whom rooms full of men, exclusively men, feel profoundly unsafe
yeah, yep.
based on histories, based on experience. There's also a way that even for men who are not carrying specific traumas with the masculine, um, there there is a kind of the phrase that comes as burden of proof that men can't carry, right? For me as a woman to be able to step with a kind of surrogacy and say, this is actually what the feminine requires from you.
Mm,
It's not theoretical. They can experience it, right? In similar ways that you've experienced it in the context of the conversation that we're having, right?
mm,
There's an invitation that I can make to you and to that beast that you can experience differently than if a man says, I can hold that for you and it's safe. I can say, I can hold that and it is needed in the world.
mm,
Not in this raw form. I can help you process that raw form until you have a relationship where you are in mastery of the expression, not in
mm.
control of the tamp down, but in mastery of the expression. And there's some of that reflection, there's some of that affirmation of what is needed for the wholeness that men just can't provide on their own.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. What I'm hearing you say is we are all individuals. We all have different histories. We all have different traumas and sorrows and angers, and so it's not a one size fits all for men who are coming out of and learning their beast and training their beast, and I love that. I the other piece of that, the gift that the feminine offers the masculine. I want to share the story of where I met you was at the Big Tent conference, and I remember um I remember sitting in one of the conference rooms and you coming in and you sat next to me and you asked if you could put your hand on my knee, and I said yes. And then I leaned over and I asked you why did you want to do that? And you said because I want to feel grounded. And I just want you to know how precious that was to me to oh
Mm.
to feel needed and desired, and to have such a beautiful, powerful woman express that I had something to offer. I think about that moment often, and it's such a simple thing, and yet the simplicity of it and the reaction that I have to it, I think speaks so deeply to the desire that men have and that I have to be desired and needed. And um, so thank you. Thank you for that. Um, why, from your perspective, why does that create this in me? Why is there such a huge emotional response to something so simple?
Mm. Hmm. Well, of course it's your emotion, but if you allow me to conjecture from over here, it's a real moment of men not being able to see what they have to offer. They can't see what they're providing. And so it can feel like they are providing nothing or they have nothing to offer. Yeah. And the other side of that work for women in the feminine is to get clear about our own desires, to get clear about our own needs, and to be able to speak to those, to be able to share them, and also to be able to validate when they're being met. The need that
Mm,
I had was real, present, and important.
mm.
if I had just kind of sidled up to you and extracted that energy without asking, you would never have known what you were providing, that you were
Mm,
meeting a need that was real and present and important. So I also have to be in the practice of knowing what I need and being able to ask for it transparently.
mm, mm. I love that. Is there in my experience, I spent 12 years married to my precious queen, and deep in my soul, I wanted nothing more than to just be connected to her and to make her life the most beautiful thing this earth has ever seen.
Mm.
And yet I had no access to that, to actually create that, because I didn't have that in myself. I hadn't created that for myself. So there was no way I could provide something to someone else that I hadn't provided to myself. And the way that all transpired, she faithfully and so courageously communicated to me for 12, 13 years, like, it's not working. Something's not right here. And I just couldn't, I didn't know what to do. And it came to the point where eventually it was just what I call the slap. Basically, she energetically, emotionally, spiritually just finally slapped me in the way that I needed to be slapped to actually wake up. And as painful as that slap was, I now look at it as one of the greatest gifts I've ever received on this earth. And I have a curiosity. Do we have to experience the level of suffering that I experienced, 12, 13 years of just banging my head against a wall? Like, the desire was there. Like, I wanted it so bad, but I couldn't get there. Do we have to experience that suffering? Because I now communicate with men who I see are in the exact same boat that I was with their women. And I'm trying to communicate to them, wake up before you have to experience the suffering that I experienced. And the other part of that question is, how do we how do we awaken women to know that they are the gatekeepers, and that their desire and their emotions, their feelings, their intuition, this feeling of like, this is not working, wake up. How do we empower women to offer their gift to men so that it doesn't have to take that long? And maybe it just does. Again, everyone's so unique. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes. And I'd love to go back a little bit. You talked about this very powerful slap, and I would love to know a little more. What was that really in your life? How did it show up? How did you experience the slap?
Mm, there's so many aspects to it, but the main thing that I can boil it down to for me was I had built such a facade of a life. I had padded myself with everything I needed to convince myself that I was good and I was safe and I was ev- everyone around me thought I was just this amazing person, such a good person, a good Christian American Marine willing to kill people for this, like just all of that stuff. I had played the game of Christianity and Americanism and capitalism perfectly so that everyone around me loved me and thought I was so amazing. And yet the people who knew me, my greatest treasures on this earth, were telling me a different story about who I was. And I silenced their voices and continued to gather the voices that would affirm me and make me feel good about myself. And so when things finally came to a head where my queen had had enough, I mean, and 12, 13 years of courageously fighting that battle and trying and offering herself so graciously and beautifully for it finally come to a head where it's like, I think divorce is the only thing left here. And for me, in that moment, I just saw the whole facade falling apart. And I saw myself exposed for who I really was. And that scared the shit out of me and drove me to actually consider what I had created and to take ownership for what I had created.
I can feel the pain in it, and I can feel the intensity. And I also want to reflect for you that it's a pretty common experience. Mm. Under pressure, in my experience, from my observation, under pressure, men tend to lean more and more into the roles, more and more into the frame of
Mm,
how to be good.
mm,
But you can't love a role and you can't feel a role, you know. And so our work together is to begin to tell the truth, right? To talk to each other, to begin to tell the truth, and to do each other actually the very generous favor of not upholding the facade, of not covering the holes, particularly for
Mm.
women, of being willing to say, I will not stay in this pageant. I'm going to
Yes.
step back and give you the space to discover who you really are if I'm not protecting the facade, right?
Mm.
Not reinforcing
Yes.
the facade. And it's hard on all sides, right?
Yeah.
There are so many narratives and I love to read widely and I take insight from wherever it comes. And one thing that I will never forget is Steve Harvey saying a man will change his woman before he'll change his ways.
Mm.
And it really hit me. I've heard it many times in my head, and it's quite common that a man in that position, when pressed to the edge, will simply shift to a woman that will reinforce the perspective that doesn't require him to come apart and to
Yes.
do the work of reassembling himself from a more conscious place.
Mm.
And so on the women's side, there is kind of the challenging play of I can step aside at all the great cost to me and the dissolution potentially of my family and what it means for me
Mm.
now as a single mother, et cetera, et cetera. And
Yeah.
that man may do the work, or he may just recast my role with someone
Yeah.
else,
Yep.
right? Who is
Yep.
willing to stand in and hold up the facade. And that can be incredibly painful on the
Oh.
other side. And so there's a lot of courage that's required
Mm.
all over. Right. And I want to speak to the fact that I'm talking right now about the heterosexual frame of marriage. I've been talking about men and women, not because that's the only frame, but because it's an important frame. This is a place that still needs quite a lot of attention, and it's not the only relational frame in which the masculine and feminine aspects are relevant. But it is certainly relevant here, and it's important that we be able to touch the narrative of how it's unfolding because the unraveling that we're seeing now is very largely in the mainstream, right? It's very much in male and female dynamics. It's very much in the the agita of marriage as an institution.
Mm.
And so if you're listening and feeling like, oh, I don't see myself here, I would encourage you to sit with the deeper principles and see how it is relevant to your life. And I want to be able to speak directly to the experience that you had, or perhaps are still having, with a woman, and how these are very common dynamics, but everybody is living in their own private and personal hell. And so you can't see the pattern. Where I come from is actually not from the therapeutic realm. That's not my training. I actually come from cultural theory. And I got into this place of doing work directly with men. I worked exclusively with men for a number of years. I got into this place because I really wanted to understand the impact of broad cultural and social change at the level of the individual. Right.
Mm.
And so what
Mm.
the individual often doesn't see is it's not you, right?
Mm.
It's not you in isolation. There's a shift in the zeitgeist that is playing out in your kitchen. And
Mm.
you can see the larger context and frame. It will actually give you some support to understand how to play within it. But when it feels exclusively like personal failure, it's very hard
Mm.
to reckon with.
I love that. That was something that I recognized early in my awakening journey was just that so much of this was just basic logical knowledge that I had not received. I didn't know how the feminine worked. I didn't know how women in general worked. I had no idea whatsoever. Not least of which was because my mother had been shamed into her box, and so I never got to see a woman who was living in her power and living in her beauty. And that's not to say that my mother isn't beautiful and powerful. She had just been subdued and beaten back into a cage. Uh and so when I connected to my queen and got a woman who was not willing to be put into a cage, uh I was completely lost. and and yet I am forever grateful for being put through that trial and that experience, because it has awakened me. And oh man.
Yeah, you asked me if the suffering is necessary, if the suffering is essential. I
Yeah.
don't think it is, but we need a
mm,
very different kind of education than the
mm,
one that is available to most humans now. Because I hear
yeah.
the same thing when I'm working with women. How come I never understood that? How come nobody ever explained that to me? Oh, it makes so much more sense.
Yes.
And, we could pull out to talk about many of the reasons structurally why it's disadvantageous to the system as a whole for us to
mm,
understand this more deeply.
yeah. Yeah.
But there's certainly no playbook for where we are now in the evolution. There's no playbook for how to be in engagement with the liberated woman that our contemporary times make possible. We haven't seen it. It's fresh, it's young,
mm,
it's emergent. We
mm,
s- we are just beginning to live into it and how to live in relationship to it as a man whose playbook is also changing. There is no book. I'm on Audible
yeah.
every day. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels to me like I'm writing the book through my
Hmm.
experience right now. And I love that. That's what I'm passionate about now, is writing that book in my own, just in my experience, in the way I'm living my life. And it's repetitive. It's relearning and remembering and falling down, experiencing, oh yeah, that's right. This is how she perceives this type of communication, and this happens when I do that. Oh yeah, for the hundredth time
Hmm.
experiencing that. And then choosing the beliefs that I choose, that I live my life by, rather than having those beliefs fed to me by someone else, and actually kind of reverse engineering into the belief system that I choose, rather than someone just telling me, oh yeah, these are the truths. It's like, well, I tried those truths and they led me to addiction, suicide, disconnection, and all of these things. And so uh, I'm done with those truths to the degree that I'm able to in this moment. And I'm slowly replacing those truths and reverse engineering from, I want connection. So what beliefs get me connection? I want love. So what beliefs bring me love? And so that's cool to hear and to just feel like we are writing that book right now. And what are how do we write that book? What are some of the foundations for how we write that book from your perspective?
I mean, I think the first tool of research that's available to all of us is to inquire internally, to really be asking questions.
Mm,
You called them religions. I relate to them as discourses or discursive frames, right? Like this is from my background in cultural theory. How do I relate to the unseen and unexpressed expectations of every day? What are those expectations, right? Like
mm,
just begin the inquiry. Anyone can wake up from where they are, right? And the second piece of that is to get in the practice of telling the truth,
mm,
right? To yourself, but also to your partner, in engagements with other people, because that spark of truth, that transmission of truth is what helps other people awaken, right? It's not a
mm.
proselytizing of you should do this. It's that moment
Yes.
that you described where I asked if I could touch her leg, and then I told you what it was providing for me.
Mm,
That's the truth. I'm not
uh,
usurping it. I'm not finding other ways to manipulate it out of you. I'm not,
uh,
you know, for instance, in that situation, like flirting and creating some sort of ambiguous invitation, right? That
yeah.
allows me access to the same thing. I just can tell you,
Mm,
hey,
mm,
I'm holding a lot of emotional space in this room. I'm being very impacted by what's happening as an empath. In order to
mm,
stay open, I actually need some back support, and I can scan this environment for the men who feel to me grounded and safe. I
mm,
feel that you have that to offer. Would you offer it to me?
mm. So it's not the way I generally think of truth is like it's more like scientific truth or spiritual truth, like Jesus died on the cross and you have to say this prayer so that like, but you're speaking of truth in just more of a experiential, like this is who I am right now. And I'm offering my vulnerability to I'm the truth of you is what I
Mhm.
hear you expressing there. Like this is me right now. And you in that moment is emotional. It's desire. It's um I don't want to say a need, but a desire for connection. A vulnerability to say, I I'm feeling all this. And so it's you expressing yourself as deeply and vulnerably as you possibly can. And I love that picture of truth because it feels so much more alive than just two plus two equals four. And that's
Mm,
beautiful.
yeah, thank you. For me, the truth is not information, right? Those things you described, they sound like information.
Mm,
Yeah. It's also not me coming up and telling you, well, I'm a very empathic person and, I approach things this way. That's also
yeah.
not a truth, right? It's a kind of self-packaging. For me, the truth is granular like that. It's
Mm,
granular, it's existential, it's experiential, and it's the persistence of the accumulation of those small moments of the truth
Mm.
found by rigorous self-inquiry, right? I have to have a close enough relationship with myself where I actually know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then the next task is to express it and to express it in a calibrated way.
Yeah.
I'm not collapsing into you. I do have a need, right? That was legitimately a need. And I knew that I had other ways to meet it. I have other practices. I could go outside. I could do some grounding. I could do some box breathing. There are many things that I could do. And the real desire, the fastest approach required connection and vulnerability. Not that I'm going to fall apart into a puddle on the floor if you don't do this thing, right? But I think you
Yeah.
have it, and I think you could meet this need with very little cost to yourself if I know how to ask you for it.
Well, and even to the contrary of that, you saw my reaction. It wasn't a cost to me, it was a gift to me. It was unbelievably precious to me. And I think it seems to me that that's what the truth actually does. It's like, not only does it explode beauty into my own life, because now I get to be proud of who I am and live in the integrity of my own soul and know that I'm someone who loves me enough to be me, but it also, everyone involved in that moment is offered the most precious gift available. And part of what I hear as you're talking is it's presence. What I hear is you did you did the work every present moment, not every present moment, but you did work leading up to that moment of presence, and you sat with yourself. You allowed yourself to be in thousands of moments before that moment, to where then when that moment came, you were able to be present with that moment and offer the deepest gift that you had, which was your vulnerability, your desire, your need, your openness, your request, your honesty, your truth, your touch, like all of that stuff just coming into that moment. And I love it.
Thank you. And here's the sometimes more controversial part, right? Which is that I bring into that moment also an awareness that the masculine and feminine are distinct in their aims, right?
Mm,
The masculine, when aligned, is providing from their deepest gifts. The feminine, when aligned, is receiving from a clarity of desire, right?
mm,
That's a beautiful complementarity, but it requires an understanding that the completion requires the presence of opposite forces,
mm,
right? That what I'm offering into that moment is my deep receptivity, right?
mm,
I feel your grounding and I want to receive it. Right?
mm,
And what is satisfying for you is being able to provide it. So we're
mm,
actually operating in different frames, right? In that
mm,
moment, I'm not giving to you. I'm actually inviting you to provide for me and completing that circuit with a recognition of what has been provided and now what is made possible. Okay,
mm,
now I can continue to hold space for the big emotion that is swelling in the rest of the field. I can continue to be available to the other people in the space. I can continue to bring my wisdom into the conversation. And I'm not outside walking in the grass, which is totally okay, but is outside of the field of connection. right? What it makes
Mm,
possible is that I can stay here and continue to offer my wisdom in this environment, in this community.
mm. I love it. I love the something that I'm and I hear is the reason that that's controversial, like you said, just because there's a pushback on for a feminine aspect to receive feels submissive or less than or like it's like it's being dominated or pushed down. Is that the when you said this is kind of more controversial, is that what you're talking about?
It's part of it, right? And part of it is even just the recognition of difference in that same community, in that same group, in that same event. And in the conversations that have followed, I've had many people say, but we're all just human, right? But it's all just universal. And there's a flattening in that that for me is both violent and ineffective.
Mm,
We're not. And I have a relationship with my own masculine aspect. I actually have to understand that in order to be able to relate well to the external masculine. And probably the piece in it that is most controversial in the way that I hold it is that these aspects are correlated, but not absolute, right?
yeah,
So the feminine is actually correlated with women. It is correlated with the biological experiences, some of the biological experiences and dimensions of being in a female body. Yeah.
yeah,
And the masculine is also correlated, though not absolutely so, with being in the male body. And we have varying ranges of organic balance, right? That's a more complicated topic of how we hold those aspects as individuals. I know that I lived through a time in my life where I sat in my aspects in a way that was upside down, in a way that was
mm,
actually inverse. So I
mm,
probably lived in the world at about 85% masculine and about, kind of 15 to 20% feminine. And as I've worked with those aspects over time and really leaned into what is actually most organically well suited for me, what is most sustainable for me. It's actually been an entire inversion to where I live
mm,
now more 80% in the feminine and 20% in the masculine, right? And that's shifting moment to moment, day by day. But what we
yeah,
don't have collectively is a nuanced enough understanding of those things to really lean into them with inquiry and curiosity. And so we foreclose the whole conversation, believing that we are protecting something, that we're protecting each other from
mm,
hierarchy. Difference does not immediately imply hierarchy, right? So we have all
mm,
kinds of reasons. We don't want to be shut down in templates or stereotypes or archetypes or, any of those limiting forms. And so we then tend to eschew or push away the framework of the masculine
uh,
and feminine.
mm,
But it's one of the most enduring frameworks of incarnation, of being human, is the masculine and feminine.
mm,
you know, Way before they were engaged in the hierarchical ordering of the modern and contemporary world, right? Which
yeah,
presupposes that the masculine is more powerful, more resourced, more capable. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And part of what I'm hearing you say again is it kind of goes back to what you were saying in that moment when you offered me your gift of requesting. You are living in your truth. You are curious about who you are. And and it feels so complicated because there's so many of these forces that are telling us who we are. But what I hear that you've done is actually sat with yourself and sat with other people and actually been curious about how different things make you feel, what actually leads you to feel alive, what leads to your pleasure, what leads to your bliss, your enjoyment, your excitement, your and if you had come to a different conclusion that actually living in your masculine actually led more to those things, then wonderful. But it feels like as humans we are trying to create these categories for each other. Like I'm looking at you and I'm telling you you're a woman, so this means this for you. You have to do this, this, and this, rather than allowing you to sit with your own experience of this life and to choose, yeah, I actually do associate more with the feminine. That leads to my radiance and excitement and pleasure. And I love that. I love that we each get to choose those things for ourselves. And yet the world is trying to, these systems are trying to tell us who we are and what we have to be acceptable, to be successful, to be safe and loved and worthy and valuable. And I'm so grateful to you for doing your work and leading the way and showing me, showing so many other people. And I love that I get to be a part of that now and actually ask myself the questions and discover who I am and create who I am and be curious about it and just follow that beautiful thread of reality, like experience, emotion, desire, all those behavior, belief. Like what does this belief create in me? Oh, it created suicide. I don't want that belief anymore. What does this emotion create in me? Oh wow, okay. I'm scared of this situation. Why? What does that say about me? And what a wonderful adventure we're on. I love it.
For me, it's about each person being able to engage in the research for themselves, right? Often the response to feeling extrinsically defined, right? Defined by some measure that is outside of us. Often the response to that is to reject the thing wholeheartedly, right? So you expect me to be feminine. I'm going to position myself around rejecting that and do
Yeah.
else, but now I'm actually just living in the conditioning, in the inversion of it. I didn't
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
get out of the conditioning. And
Yeah.
so it's the willingness to explore and to do the research. What is this for me? What is the impact that it has? Not from a place of being manipulative, right? That's the whole like pickup artist line, right? And
Yeah.
the inverse for women that is like, I'm gonna have my life paid for and provided for by knowing how to manipulate the masculine impulse to provide, right?
Mm,
There's
yeah.
all of that potential to manipulate this wisdom, but the
Yeah.
wisdom itself is really there for you to explore moment to moment, you know?
And it seems like one of the requirements or opportunities there is that I have to take responsibility for this. This is my responsibility. It's not your responsibility to tell me who I am. And then when you do tell me who I am and it causes disruption and anger and fear, and I have to be able to bring that feedback in to process it to provide myself enough safety to say, Kianga gets to think what she thinks about me, or Christianity gets to think what it thinks about me. But the only one that matters, the only one that it matters what they think about me is me. And creating that safety for myself has been, and I create that safety oftentimes through connecting with people like you and my brotherhood, and but that's still me creating those places for me to experience different things and process different things. But it all comes down to, I am my responsibility. And if I ever give that responsibility to anything else, I suffer. And so does everyone who comes in contact with me.
I'm super curious to hear how things evolved with the woman in your life when you came to these
Ah,
realizations.
oh man. We are about 4 years from that slap that I described. And we're more in love than we ever have been. Um, I I worship her. I um she is my oracle, she is my goddess, she is my queen. Um that doesn't mean that I don't revert back to the patterns that I established for so long, and yet the new perspective, the new belief system that I have for myself allows me to process those moments in a whole new way and to alchemize that pain and that suffering that I still create so much quicker. and and to turn that destruction into connection and healing and opportunity, rather than uh, just going down in the history books as like, oh, there's another failure that just will be lodged in our nervous systems for all eternity as sorrow and suffering and sadness. Um, we're in the deep fight just of love, and there's so much there, that the mirroring and the reflecting of each other, that is there's still so much growth to be had and opportunity to be gleaned from this relationship. um yeah, does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Mm.
We are getting close to an hour and 45 minutes, I think, which I love because I could just keep going forever and ever. I love your presence. I love you. You're precious. You're beautiful. You're wise. And I love being with you. Um, I'm interested, um, to kind of close it out. I'm interested in a resource that you would recommend, um, whether that be a book or a movie or a conference, or anything that's just speaking to you. And you already mentioned that book, which I want to write that down and read that. It sounds incredible. And then also a hero of yours or someone that you take inspiration from and love. Uh, and finally, an admonition to, or a challenge or an offering to anyone who may be listening.
Mm. Okay, I'm going to start to walk through those. You remind me if there are any
Yeah,
that,
you bet. Absolutely.
yeah. I think one of the things about heroes, or maybe one of the best ways to honor one's heroes is to follow them into the work. Right? Not to pedestalize them, be like, wow,
Mm,
they have changed something, but okay, they have offered a path and they're shining a light and I can walk toward that. And so
mm,
in that spirit, I love to shout out to our other fellow big tenter, Allison Armstrong,
mm,
who I first learned about Allison's work, 13, 14 years ago now, maybe more. Time. What is time? And it was a radical reframing for me. It's been
mm,
30 plus years, I think, for Allison with this imperative to understand men and help other women understand men. And
mm,
that was a radical shift point for me in my life. And
mm,
it allowed me to show up for this very unexpected path that was offered to me. At the time, I was an academic, I was a university professor. I came from a background of anti-essentialist feminist theory, which didn't really allow us to inquire about the feminine in these ways.
mm,
And yeah, it was a game changer. And so I highly recommend everything that she does and offers. And one of the most pivotal books in my experience of sharing it through teaching is the Queen's Code. Yeah.
mm,
So woof, what a pairing, those two. Yeah.
mm,
Giselle Pellico and her A Hymn to Life, which is about moving through such atrocity with a sense of self and a sense of
mm,
contribution back to women and the
mm,
potential for wholeness. She comes through that whole experience in a new love relationship, a new intimate relationship with no hatred for men, with an a depth of compassion for self and others that is unique. Yeah. Yeah. So if you read those two together and your mind explodes, shoot me a note.
mm. I like as you're describing that, I have images of other examples of that, and to me, like that's nothing short of just magic. Like, and it speaks to the depth of what's available here to experience something like that and come out on the other side without hate or and even with more love. Like, I can't wait to read it.
Mm.
And to speak to Alison Armstrong, getting to be at that conference and actually sit with her and touch her hand was like it was like a starstruck moment for me. It was I feel much the same in your presence as I do in hers, like I'm sitting with a queen.
Mm.
And I'm so honored to have been able to sit among you and she. Um, and then what if there was one last admonition or challenge or love offering or whatever whatever you would want to offer to the world, to the space, to me, to yourself.
Mm. So I do a lot of my work intuitively, and I'm often surprised by the words that come. And the phrase that came was to go through the limitations into the possibilities, to move through the apparent limitations and constrictions of thinking about gender, thinking about masculinity and femininity and men and women and male and female, to actually, rather than avoiding those, rather than collapsing them into a universal subject, which
Mm,
is a frame where we actually lose a lot of nuance and lose a lot of understanding, to move past
mm,
the places where they limit us with enough curiosity to find in them the field of possibility that they also offer.
I hear that. I love that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mm, thanks for being with me. Kianga, this has been such an amazing conversation, and I'm curious, where can people connect with you?
Thank you. I hold space in a wisdom school called Love and Freedom Education. You can find us online, usually loveandfreedomeducation.com. And we have a number of projects and programs ongoing, but one way you can always find me is at Kianga at loveandfreedomeducation.com. Just drop me an email. Yeah,
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
yeah, my pleasure.
Um, I'm deeply grateful, and um, I hope we can do it again sometime. Um,
Same time next week.
heck yeah. Um, I thank you. I want to also thank myself for being here and just offering my vulnerability. I want to thank anyone else who may be listening. I feel your presence, and you are beautiful, you are worthy, you're valuable, and I love you.
Mm.
And the way I usually end the podcast is with this little prayer or admonition or whatever. In perfect alignment with reality, may I continue to remember and reclaim my wholeness because I am infinitely and inherently valuable, and the world is longing to witness the beauty of one whole man. Kianga, I
Amen.
love you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Mm.